Okay, everyone, thank you all so much again for being here. It is such a delight to get to be hosting these monthly Ayurvedic astrology or Vedic astrology chats with David. He's calling it apocalyptic astrology just because it feels like there is a lot going on in the world right now, and there's a lot to integrate, a lot of big shifts and changes. So if you don't already know David McConaghay, he is one of our dear friends. We got to study under Alakananda Ma with him here in Boulder, Colorado. He is an Ayurvedic doctor, an a Vedic astrologer, and a Doctor of Divinity candidate. So he is highly qualified to talk on the topic. And there is just so much to talk about now with this eclipse cycle and with the state of the world. And as we just mentioned on the IG Live, we do want to acknowledge that we're cognizant of taking up space right now in a time when we're really, really focused on amplifying Black voices. But as David mentioned, it feels really, really, this work and this information feels really relevant to the cause and how we can be aligning and activating and healing and seeking new information in ways that will really, really serve. So I also want to presence. I've noticed myself a couple of times saying things like, "Oh, you know, or like thinking the world is coming to an end. What's going on?" Like it's all falling apart when actually this is such an extraordinary and beautiful time, and specifically for people who have been oppressed for hundreds of years. This is not the end of the world. This is a full opening and beginning. And so just being cognizant of that language as we move forward feels really relevant for me. And also we are in meeting format because we want people to feel welcomed to engage. So as David shares with us, please jump in and ask questions and give your ideas and feedback. That's definitely part of this. This is a whole conversation. So with that, I want to welcome David. Thank you for being here and for offering powerful wisdom that you spend so much time diving deep into. We are so grateful and excited to hear all that you have to say. So take it away.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Sierra, for setting the stage, and thanks everybody for being here, taking some time out of your Saturday to connect with us. And yeah, I just want to really reiterate what Sierra just said about this being more of a conversational format. I will find ways to talk the whole time if that's what wants to happen. And I would love to hear what's happening with you. If something I'm saying resonates or clicks or is contrary to what you've been feeling or seeing, then let's talk about it, because I have my experience and I have my lens through which I read these charts, and that's what I've got, right? And so really want to encourage the conversation. So the main topic today that we want to talk about is this eclipse cycle that we are now in. As of yesterday, we had this full moon eclipse in sidereal Scorpio. So if you're following your Western astrology, everybody would have said that it's in Sagittarius. And so a little bit different, sidereal zodiac versus tropical zodiac. And so from our perspective, it was in Scorpio. And let's see, am I allowed to share content here? Hey, Sierra, would you make me a host so I can share the image of the chart from yesterday's eclipse, just so we can have a shared reference point and actually look and see what the sky looks like. I've been assigned as co-host. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, let's see. Make sure I picked the right one. Hey, Katrina. Yeah, that's yesterday.
Wow, so many babes that we love here. I'm grabbing a pen.
Yeah, so many wonderful humans. So happy to see. I see Perry-Ann. I see Acacia. I see Carl. I see Rebecca, John.
Chelsea, Mike,
Sebas,
Alexa.
Chelsea, Alexa, Prema. Hey,
Oh
everybody.
my God.
So
So many babes.
wonderful.
So many babes.
Michael, how are you? So many people we love.
Yes.
Okay. So, can everybody see this chart showing? This is the chart from yesterday, and this was 8:24 p.m. The chart from the island of Air Raid in Scotland, which is where I am. And so one of the things to know, this is a penumbral lunar eclipse, which basically means that it's not a total solar eclipse, right? It's actually at quite a distance. So we can see that. Oh, do I have presentation tools? Oh, I just found out that I can do this, and I love these tools. Okay, so we have the moon and the sun exactly opposite, right? So sun at 21 degrees Taurus, moon at 21 degrees Scorpio. Now, these are exactly opposite in the sky, and that shows the full moon, right? When the sun and moon are exactly opposite and the earth is in between, that and this is us on earth here in the center. Excellent circle, if I do say so. So here's us on Earth, and here's the sun and moon exactly opposite each other out in space. And this Rahu and Ketu are the lunar nodes. These are the shadow planets that during an eclipse, the shadow crosses over the luminary, right? And so these shadow entities always exist out in space, but we don't see them because they are of the shadow. The only time we actually see them take form is when they cross the luminary bodies, the sun and moon. And so there's all sorts of mythology about this, but generally they are considered to be the head and body of a decapitated demon. Also sometimes a dragon, sometimes a demon. And so the thing to note is that during a total eclipse, Rahu will be right on, would also be at 21 degrees, and Ketu would also be at 21 degrees. But here, there's this pretty significant deviation of 14 degrees. And yeah, from 21 to 30 degrees, each sign gets 30 degrees, and then so 5 degrees into Gemini. So all that is some of the astronomy of how an eclipse actually happens, right? And so it's not a total eclipse, but nonetheless, the focus is this Scorpio energy. And Scorpio, for those of us who need reminding, it is the sign of the emotional warrior. It is ruled by the planet Mars, who is, the red planet. It's all, Mars is the warrior quality within us. It is, etymologically, we can look at martial and Marines and there's a focus and a concern about martial law right now. No kidding. This eclipse in Mars's sign, and it has the qualities of fixed water, and water gets fixed in a couple different ways. Fixed is in like not moving, stuck or still, and so this can happen when water is frozen. That's the main way that water gets fixed. It also always reminds me of the bottom of the ocean, and some of you may have heard me say this before, but the main way that I understand the sign of Scorpio is at the bottom of the ocean, the water is very still, it's very dense, there's a lot of pressure. It's very similar to outer space, and there are monsters floating around, and if you go scuba diving down there, you cannot come up very quickly. It's quite dangerous to go down there. Sharks and that angler fish, right, with the light bulb that hangs in front, and then the jaws, that. And so the other thing that's down at the bottom of the ocean are shipwrecks. sailors' bones, every shipwreck that's ever happened sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And that also includes lots of treasure, secret hidden treasure. And it takes the qualities of a warrior who is not afraid, who is, or maybe afraid, but is willing to take the risk anyway to accomplish the mission, to retrieve the treasure, willing to go risk his or her life to find the treasure that's hidden at the bottom of the ocean. So Scorpio is about secret power, hidden influence, and this treasure, this really valuable resource that is below the surface, and takes the warrior's attitude to get access to. So this is really indicative of our time, and how there is this treasure that exists in society right now, right? The treasure, as I see it, would be a more equitable, just society, right? A world in which none of us are afraid of police violence. None of us have to, suffer unnecessarily, and that we all truly have equal opportunity and can live as the freeborn humans that we are, having been born on Earth, regardless of color of our skin or socioeconomic status or anything like that, right? And so that treasure exists in potential right now, but we must cultivate our warrior qualities to swim past the sharks and the tricky angler fish that wants to snap its jaws around us and make ourselves, it's not fun, it's not comfortable, it's quite dangerous, literally life or death dangerous. But we have to go there if we want to acquire that treasure. And specifically, this eclipse was in the nakshatra of Jyeshta. So the nakshatra, so here we have this image that we're looking at is, we're on the Earth in the center, and around us is this ring of constellations through which the planets move from our perspective. If you then take, so that's one circle around the Earth. If you then go out one concentric layer, there's another concentric circle of distant constellations that there are 27 of them that subdivide the zodiac into 27 parts, as opposed to the 12 parts of the familiar zodiac. And so the smaller slice of the sky, that more precise area that this eclipse has taken place in, is called Jyeshta, which means the eldest, and it's the eldest sibling is the energy that is suggested. And it literally has to do with connecting to the principles that we are willing to fight and, if necessary, die for. The story associated with Jyeshta is of Lord Indra, who is the king of the gods in the Puranic tradition, and sort of equivalent to Zeus in the Greek. And so he's king of the gods, and there's this story of how a dragon has stolen all the water from the planet and is swallowed it up in his belly, and there's great catastrophe and famine and all these things that happen without water. And so immediately we see the parallels, right, with the dragon energy of Rahu and Ketu, the eclipse, and then the water, that emotional water is our main metaphor for our emotional bodies, happening in Scorpio, right? So all the water's been stolen, drunk up by this dragon who's then terrorizing the earth. And Lord Indra, as the king of the gods, stands before the dragon with his sword, and they're doing battle, and he realizes that his only way is to let himself be swallowed. And so he allows the dragon to swallow him, goes into the belly of the dragon, slices it open from the inside, and out floods all the water. The dragon is defeated, water is restored, and the earth is saved for the time being. Now, this immediately reminds this is the conclusion to the first Men in Black, movie. There's all sorts of different ways that this is a very common mythological theme throughout history, but it's very potent, because in order to earn the victory and accomplish the mission, Lord Indra had to be willing to die. And for a minute, I'm sure if you were watching that battle and you watched the dragon eat the king of the gods, that is the all is lost moment in the hero's journey, right? That's like, how is that possible? And in Men in Black, right, Will Smith gets eaten, or is it Tommy Lee Jones? I don't remember who it was, but anyway, they get eaten, and it's like, oh crap, I thought they were gonna defeat the dragon, but no, it's a tragic ending. But no, then they slice it open, and the world is saved. So yeah, that to me is so potent right now, as we see people putting their bodies on the line in the streets to demonstrate that the system as it exists is no longer acceptable. Not that it ever really was acceptable, but this is where it stops. This is where it changes, and people are willing to put their bodies on the line to make that point. You know, and like, there's this horrifying video. There's several of them actually, of old people getting shoved over and bleeding, but that is this example of being willing to die, literally willing to die, based on those principles, and this principle that Black Lives Matter, that social justice is a necessity, not a convenience or a luxury, right? And so the other place that this shows up, and this is where I think it gets really significant and has really impacted my thinking. There's all sorts of opinions and sides to this, right? One of those sides are the what they call themselves, the Boogaloo Boys, right? And they are basically white nationalist militias who are quite well organized and well armed, and see this moment as the turning point that it is, right? And it's a tipping point. And which way is it going to go? Well, they believe in their cause, and they are ready for it, and they're willing to fight and die for it, or so they believe. You know, and this is not conjecture. This is not speculation. This is not conspiracy. You can find their groups on the interwebs, and you can see that they are specifically rallying themselves, pulling the militias together, showing up at these sites. There's a whole bunch of stuff been going on in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where there's people, these white militias lining the streets. So this is part of what's happening, and the same energy, they are calling on their warrior selves, where it's not necessarily fun or comfortable, but they're willing to fight and die for their cause. And so for those of us who are imagining a more peaceful, just, equitable type of world, we also need to find that warrior within us right now. This eclipse is yesterday, and specifically for the next 2 weeks until the next eclipse, it's really time to call on that warrior quality, that warrior energy, and get really clear on what are we committed to that we're willing to fight and die for. What is more important than our individual lives? What capital T truth are we aligned with, where we would rather die in its service than live having abandoned it? So I'm going to just pause there for a second, because that's pretty intense, and I want to see if that lands, if that makes sense, if that is in line with what people are feeling, experiencing, seeing.
I was just reflecting on last night at the Denver protests, which were super, super peaceful. But the march went right over to the police station, and these some of the organizers got up on the back of a car, and they said, okay, we're at the police station, we are terrified, we're here to deliver a message, but we're scared, and we're going to lay some ground rules. And one of the things that they said was, you are a white person. If you are in a white body, we need you to put yourself physically between us and the police if there's any tension that shows, you know, if there's any tension or any violence that shows up. And we're all like, of course, we're here for it. We're here for it. And then there was this moment where a little bit of chaos and you know, yeah, a little tension arose. It was actually among the group, and because someone threw a bottle. And in that moment, this really heightened intention, and some people bolted backwards. And it was this moment where it was like, okay, like, we didn't have to, but I was very confronted by the choice of like, okay, this is my moment. I'm going to hurl my body in front of these people. And yeah, but it's when the moment comes down to it, it was very easy to see why you would not,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
but then after that moment, when I thought like, wow, there was a split second where I considered running, I thought, how could I live with myself? Like exactly what you said, like, I would rather die doing the thing than live with myself having run in the other direction.
Yeah.
We didn't actually have to do it, but it could be a split second choice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Really powerful. Thank
But
you
it
for that. That's a
lands,
perfect example.
yeah, it's a very, very real experience that we are and choice that we're confronted with in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another quality of Mars. Mars wants to destroy that which it perceives makes us weak, and so it's like that's part of it. But it also is primarily tasked with keeping us alive, right? It's the part of us that is willing to fight for survival. And so, where on that spectrum are we fighting for survival? Right? Are we fighting for the survival of our individual body? Which is you know a perfectly valid form of fight, and every living organism in all existence has that impulse. You know, even if you poke it, a single-celled organism will try to wiggle away from you, right? That's the Mars quality of trying to survive. And on the higher end of the spectrum, which is really a more abstract, spiritually oriented end of the spectrum, is the survival of the principle, and there's the fighting for the righteousness and what is good in this metaphysical way that is beyond our individual incarnation, that is aligned with like the survival of our soul, basically, where like you said, like, how could you live with yourself if you ran in that moment? And that's the sort of thing where, you know, you die a little bit inside even if you survive the encounter. And so the other thing that comes to mind is the other people fighting for their survival right now are the police, right? There's all sorts of stories about, you know, the police saying that they are afraid for their lives. My brother, who lives in New York City, was at a bunch of the actions and said the police looked overwhelmed and terrified, and like they were scrambling just to keep some semblance of control. And now there is this movement gaining lots of momentum and popular support, thank goodness, about defunding the police and removing their access to this, you know, military equipment, and transforming, you know, disbanding police and reforming as public safety commissions, right? And that's a totally different approach to community service. And so literally they are in a fight for their survival. And so and crazy things happen, right? In that split second moment when you're afraid for your survival, those are the moments where we find out what we're actually made of, right? And where our principles truly lie. There's this question of like, how do I know what I think until I see what I do? And those moments expose us to our true nature and our true motivations. And so you don't know what that's going to be like. And so in this moment where the police themselves are afraid for the survival of their way of being and way of existing, they are, you know, not responding in the most intelligent way for the most part, right? In terms of increasing the violence. Oh, y'all are protesting police violence? Well, we're going to crack some skulls in response. Like, that is maybe not the most intelligent way to assure your survival, but it is a very Martian way of doing it. You know, a lot of it's the fight response, and that's Mars.
Yep.
Yeah. Does anybody else have input or feedback on that quality? Does anybody have a sense of or experience, maybe like, when have you felt that warrior quality within you, where you were so clearly aligned with, like, yes, this is more important than just me, and I'm willing to fight for this, or you know, on either side of it? And I've got examples on both sides of the equation for sure, where I was like, oh, I'm running away from this.
We're shy, you know. We're just here to
Yeah,
listen
I
to you,
understand.
David. Wait, here we have a comment. What sort of influence does this time have on signs that have more inner conservative qualities? Says Sebastian. So maybe you'll integrate that in.
Yeah. Well, you know, Scorpio is the feminine expression of Mars, which is the internalized quality, and that's where it really does have to do with this connection to your own highest principles. And so the external expression of showing up on the front lines in a protest is one example, but you can see it happening on social media as well, where people are doing this self-inquiry and asking themselves, what do I really stand for? And am I willing to remain silent in this time? And you see that showing up, where I've seen a lot of people say, like, I'm not usually one to talk about politics, or I've never said anything like this before. I'm afraid to say this because of the potential backlash, but I have to say this anyway. And so that I see it also showing up in that way, where and that's also a perfectly appropriate expression of this energy. You know, some people are there on the front lines putting their bodies in front of police officers. Some people are raising money. Some people are providing food and medicine. Some people are writing blogs and essays. Some people are writing emails to their leaders, and you know, and some people are doing a combination, right? So we're all doing it the way we feel called and able to. But I know that putting up a vulnerable post or talking about politics online can feel like a life or death thing, right? And you're putting your social life on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get, you know, individual charts will be affected by this differently, you know, depending where Scorpio is in your chart and the other planets around it. So we can that requires a little deeper analysis. And Sebas, your question is on point, because it actually is an internal reckoning. It is this connection to the inner understanding of where this warrior lives within you, and then how you express that outwardly is almost a separate thing. It's like the outward expressions are potentially infinite, but once you've connected to that sense of righteousness, that sense of capital T truth, that is your larger principle. And so Jeshta, the eldest sibling, has to do with responsibility. And so that's part of what we're talking about. It's like, what are you willing to take responsibility for? And I just wrote this. The Colorado Ayurvedic Medical Association is putting out a statement soon, you know, this weekend, and I was editing that, and I was writing about how you know, systemic racism and oppression is not the fault of any one individual, and each one of us must take responsibility for its dismantling, right? It's we can't blame, you know, the Orange King or any one particular individual for the whole system operating the way it does. Even, you know, the bad cops or whatever, they're, you know, the crazy thing is to put yourself in their shoes, their upbringing, their socioeconomic circumstances, all that, and their training, and you would do the same thing they do, right? The relativity and the circumstances of their existence, we can never know what we would do if we were the sum total of that individual's experience. And so it's not anybody's fault, but one of the qualities of being an elder and being a true adult is to take responsibility for that which is not your fault. And that is really what this moment is about, and finding that alignment where it's like, okay, if I believe in social justice, racial equality, then cool, like that's a stable source of that's a stable reference point, right? And then, okay, so I need to take action based on, I need to orient my actions in the world based on that reference point. And it very quickly leads into things that are not my fault, that I didn't do. Oh, well, I'm not racist. Oh, well, I didn't, you know, put that system in place. Oh, well, you know, blah, 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 blah. And so that's like the first hurdle, right? It's like, well, how much are you willing to take responsibility for your beliefs? And if you really believe in it, then you have to go beyond what can be argued is your responsibility, right? Where it's like, oh, well, you know, I didn't kill anybody, and so I'm just fine. It's like, well, yeah. So that is such a crucial thing, and you know, I think for sure it was Will Smith who put out a thing on the interwebs a while ago where he's talking about this, taking responsibility. Like, is it your fault? Maybe or maybe not, but are you responsible for it? And you see this all the time with people in charge of major organizations where something happens and it's somebody lower down, some, you know, maybe not even on the executive levels, you know, something happens in the company where some terrible mistake is made, and it's not the chairman of the board's fault, and yet it is their responsibility, and they are the one who resigns, right? If they do it properly. I mean, these days all bets are off, but in theory they take responsibility, like, hey, this is my organization, or you know, I am charged with caretaking this organization, and I wasn't the one who, you know, put lead paint on these dolls. I didn't even know. I didn't make that decision, but nonetheless, I'm responsible, and so I have to take the feedback and the responsibility for it, right?
You're especially responsible right now, of course, when it's a system that we are unjustly benefiting from as white people. So that's like even more so a reason to step in, because or take responsibility for it, because we've benefited from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, again, personally, individually, it's like, well, I've never, you know, I'm not a slave owner. I never, you know, oppressed anybody. I'm doing my best to, like, get by myself, and I'm trying to make a living too, and blah, blah. It's like, yeah, and exactly, like, ongoing beneficiary of genetic privilege and socioeconomic privilege, and ongoing, the list goes on. You know, all the norms of society I match up with, right? And so I feel this incredible duty, and there's a bunch of encouragement out there to start to create your own reparations plan. And I really, really like that. And you know, last year I inherited a bunch of money, and as soon as I received it, I started looking for, okay, this is oh yeah, I can, while we're just talking, I can turn off the screen share. As soon as I got a hold of this, I immediately started looking at, where did this money come from? Like, how was this wealth created, and how can I transform it and move it in a way that is in no way undercutting my well-being, but that is a form of reparations, is a form of reinvesting it and transmuting it into ways that will benefit historically underprivileged, underserved, oppressed peoples. And I connected with a community organization, and the woman I connected with was specifically talking about reparations. And I think that really needs to be part of the conversation. It is one of the things that Marianne Williamson was talking about in her presidential campaign, is putting together a legit plan for reparations. And you look at the cultural and economic capital and wealth that specifically people of color have created in this country. You know, look at years of slavery and criminally enforced, you know, chain gangs and all of the physical labor that people of color have created, have done in this country, to, you know, and like Asian Americans, you know, being the primary workers building the railroad system, and like it just goes on and on. And oh, we're the wealthiest country in the world now, and basically, you know, like it's all from the labor of Black, brown bodies. And to think that there's not the need to redistribute that wealth, that's a really charged political term, but it literally needs to be a redistribution of wealth, and not so that anybody is suffering, right? This is such the confusing thing about, like, nobody needs to go hungry, nobody needs to be living on the street. There's enough for everybody. There are enough empty homes in the country to give one to every single homeless person. Like there's not a shortage of supply. We have a distribution problem. And so that's where we get into capitalism and all these sorts of socio-political issues. And it actually, that we can segue that into the upcoming eclipse on the summer solstice, which happens in the sign of Gemini, and is in Mrigashira nakshatra, and this is an area of the sky specifically associated with the innocent search for a more beautiful world, and the really innocent desire, like, why can't we just create something beautiful? Like, and so it's associated. The story is, so Prajapati, which is one of the names of the creator, his first creation was the most beautiful daughter of all time, most beautiful daughter possible, Rohini. And so Rohini is this most beautiful possible being. And Prajapati looks around and says, okay, I want to fill the created world with other beautiful beings that match the beauty of this daughter I've created. And so how can I do that? Well, I have to procreate with this daughter, right? And so it's really interesting. You go to creation myths from around the world, different traditions, and there's always this theme of incest, where like even you go to Adam and Eve, right? And so how did just Adam and Eve populate the whole world? The two of them had 3 sons. Now, how did everybody else get here? Think about it. It doesn't take long to think about how. Now, who would they have procreated with to create everybody else, right? And so this theme of incest goes throughout all sorts of creation myths. And so Rohini, in her like innocence and beauty, is like, oh, like, Dad, get out of here. What are you doing? And so she turns herself into a deer and runs away. And so Mrigashira literally means the head of a deer. And it is this 13-degree portion of the sky that links Taurus with Gemini. And so it's symbolized by the deer, where the deer is a 4-footed animal. So like Taurus, like very stable in that way. That is Taurus, that fixed earth sign. So it's this stable 4-footed animal. But then you get into Gemini, an air sign, mutable air sign. And the deer is like a little bit skittish, right? And always looking, always sort of like, you know, and any noise and it darts away. And so it's both these things. It's this very stable, peaceful, calm animal that's also quite skittish and will run off. So that's Taurus and Gemini connecting there. And this eclipse on the summer solstice will happen in the Gemini side of Mrigashira. And so Gemini rules the neck and shoulders. And it is literally that part of us that looks around and tries to collect data from every viewpoint. Okay, I know where I am here because I can look around, look behind me, and look all around and gather all that information so that I can then locate myself. And so there's a big theme of innocence in this place, which is simultaneously the innocence of Rohini, she's just beautiful. She's this innocent, she's this daughter of the creator who just is so beautiful and wants to just be, and the beauty of a deer and the way a deer moves through the world is graceful and peaceful and just wants to be in the forest and all that, right? But it's also the innocence of Prajapati, the creator who wants to procreate with his daughter, not out of any perverted intention, but to fill the world with beings as beautiful as his daughter. And so there's also the innocence of the creator who just wants to create a beautiful world. And it so often shows up, like, how often I know I've had this experience of like such innocent intent and such backwards or distorted outcomes, and like, I swear I was really just trying to do something nice, and it gets totally misinterpreted and sabotages and uproots the whole situation. It's like, I really was just trying to do, and so again, this is happening a lot, and we can expect it to increase, is well-intentioned, mostly white people saying things and doing things that they think are going to help and that are part of being an ally. And intent does not equal impact is sort of a key phrase for this area of the sky. And you know, Rohini wants to just enjoy her innocence, and so she runs away, and by running away delays the creation of beautiful creatures in the world. And Prajapati just wants to create beauty in the world, but in trying to do that, he, you know, is trying to have incestuous relations with his daughter. Like, and so around the summer solstice, and really, like, I was just talking to my teacher the other day, and he was saying within 10 days of a solar eclipse is really when these energies are most potent. So we can see really like June 10th, which is 4 days from now. So we've got another 4 days really of this warrior quality being the main theme. And really, okay, so it's the most intense right now, but these themes are generally active until the next eclipse cycle in December. We've got mid-December is the next time the eclipses come around, and when that happens, the nodes will have changed signs and we'll be in a new axis. It'll be in this Taurus Scorpio axis, and so that's going to be a totally different energy. So we're getting a hint of that right now, but yeah, these next two eclipses are Gemini and then Sagittarius. So the last two eclipses in that Gemini Sag angle.
Can I just name something from the social justice standpoint, thinking about this idea that intention does not equal impact, and being like, oh, I just was trying to do good, and you know, there's wanting to, as I understood you say, like, reclaim innocence in that, but also just understanding that it doesn't necessarily make us innocent, it makes us fragile, like there's a white fragility component there that's like, yeah, no, we're still, if we're doing it wrong, we're still doing it wrong, and we need to do better. We need to know better and then do better. And that our innocence isn't even enough to just be like, well, see, we're trying, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
it's sitting with your fragility around and being willing to be wrong and being willing to know that your intention doesn't equal impact and that you just need to keep doing more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to not let that fragility or fear of doing it wrong prevent you from speaking up, prevent you from trying to do the work. This idea, it's an imperfect metaphor, but it's what has come to mind is like, if you are babysitting and the baby has a poopy diaper, and you say, oh well, like, I'm not sure, like, I've never changed a diaper before, I don't know how to do it, I'm sort of clumsy about it, I might do it wrong. It's like, and then you just don't change the diaper. Like, that's not the way to do it, right? You get in there, you change the diaper, and maybe it's messy, maybe it's clumsy, maybe you have to clean some shit up off the ground, but you know, you do it once, and maybe the second time you do it a little bit better, and the third time, and then you start to get the hang of it, and you don't just not clean, you don't just leave the baby with a poopy diaper. That's not, and so the reason I say it's imperfect is because in theory, like, if we follow through it, it makes people of color the baby, and that's not at all what we're trying to say, right? But
We're
from
talking
our
about
perspective, like,
shit on ourselves.
from my it's the act, like, you don't not do it just because you're not sure you know how.
Yeah.
And where the innocence comes in is in, okay, so like, I am coming at it like sincerely trying to do better, and from where I am, I do the best I can based on what I know, and I've done this, and I say the wrong thing, or I do something stupid that centers myself, or whatever it is, and then I get the feedback, and it's like, oh man, oh, and like immediately it's like, oh, that's so dumb. How could I have thought? And really easy to go into, I'm a bad person, I'm so stupid, I'm gonna shut down and walk away, and I wish, you know, the people who helped me see that would have been nicer about it, or whatever. Like, that's not, that's actually the moment to connect to the innocence as opposed to the fragility, and be like, okay, I am still a basically good person, I am sincerely trying to be of service in this, and now that I know better, I can do better and come at it again. And so it's that seeking for the better world, and that truly, like, oh, wouldn't it be beautiful if there wasn't even anything to seek justice for? I said this in my live on Sunday, is like, wouldn't it be nice, like, at this point we need justice, right? There needs to be justice for killer cops, and for the whole system, really. And wouldn't it be beautiful if there was no one to mourn who had been unnecessarily killed? And because at this point, like, just arresting and putting cops in jail doesn't bring back these precious human lives. And so justice, like, on simple, like, fuck justice, like, we need preventative justice, right? Like, it's too late on some level now. And so, you know, now that the crime has been committed, there's only, we have limited options for restoration. So that's like, and that ideal can feel really naive sometimes. You know, I've been part of a couple conversations where people are advocating for the defunding of the police, and people are like, oh well, if you get rid of the police, then the wolves come in, and you know, well, what's the difference between a peace officer and a police officer? They're just the same thing, they're still just a state employee. It's like, and there are these really strong and in certain moments convincing arguments that it's naive to try to get rid of the police, and it's naive to believe that we can all just exist peacefully together with peace officers. And so you have to find this innocence of like, hey, actually, I trust people, and people are basically good, and we can have it differently. And the way it's set up, the police are the wolves. They're not preventing the wolves from attacking the sheep. The police are the wolves. And so we need to shift that system, and to connect that innocent desire for, oh, this more beautiful world is available. And we can only see it when we take on that place of innocence and belief and faith, and and connect to the warrior quality who's willing to go suffer and potentially die in service of that innocent vision. That's the paradox of the moment in so many ways. So let's just look at the chart for this. Is this the one? Nope. This one, I think. Yeah. So this is the chart, and so we can. This is summer solstice eclipse. Just like that. I'm gonna hide all that. So here we have. So you see, this is a total solar eclipse. So we can see that it's much closer now, right? So moon at 1 degree. Oh, don't do that. I want my pen. So moon at 1 degree, sun at 5 degrees. So this gets to be really close to, this is the new moon. So during a full moon, sun and moon are opposite sides of the earth, right? So the sun can shine on the moon. The new moon is when the sun and moon are together on one side. And so the sun's light is shining on the back side of the moon. So the front side that we see is dark. And we see, okay, so 1 degree, 5 degrees, 4 degrees. And so, so it's all together. So this is a total solar eclipse where the shadow will completely cover the sun. And this is happening, it's happening right at sunrise. The ascendant here is rising right on the eastern horizon. So the total eclipse, the high point of the eclipse is right at sunrise, and it happens over northern India, Tibet. So let's draw our circle here. That's a little bit better. Right, so we can see that this is happening in the sign of Gemini, and specifically this area of Gemini called Mrigashira. And we see that Mercury is right there. Mercury is the ruler of the sign of Gemini. And so it exacerbates it. It really accelerates this Gemini quality of trying to collect information, just being curious, not a lot of good and bad judgments, just collecting new data. Now, Mercury is all about communications, right? And we can see, dreaded Mercury retrograde. That R means retrograde. So I have sincere concerns about our communication systems, our electrical grids, about like literally like electricity shorting out sort of thing. It's a very Vata moment. Rahu is a very Vata deranging energy. Mutable air sign, changeable air sign. It's really a lot of wind and therefore electrical energy. And so it's really this moment, like I'm not big on making predictions, but I have this nervousness about our communication systems, like concerned about like the internet, and so really would encourage you to know your friends' addresses and landline phone numbers if that's still a thing. And just, if you have like a solar charger or something, like have that handy. I just have this nervousness with all that action happening, this total eclipse in Gemini with Mercury retrograde in the mix with it. It's just makes me nervous. About electrical systems and communication systems, but really it is potentially a time where there will be a renewed focus on data collection, which is either and potentially both the tracking software that they want everybody to download on their phone, right? Contact tracing, like literally data collection, the whole, Edward Snowden ordeal to the nth degree, right? Spying on American citizens in an extreme way. That's that data collection, but also collecting new data about what's really happening. Now, because it's an eclipse, because it's this portal, this demonic energy, again, it's likely that this is distorted data. And and so again, it may not be about communication systems going down, but that it could be a time where there's a big lie put forward, which is always something to be worried about or aware of, right? That some big new truth will come out and will start to reshape the information landscape, and it may be one of those conspiracy theories like the Gulf of Tonkin, like the Reichstag fire, conspiracy facts actually, right? And so it's a time where the information war is likely to kick up, and that's mostly what we're in right now at this point is an information war. Is the there are 1,000 different narratives that you can choose from and find plenty of evidence that, oh, it's Antifa, oh, it's white nationalists, oh, it's just the black protesters doing all the damage, oh, it's just the cops being violent. It's like you can pick your narrative and find a lot of data for it. And this eclipse on the summer solstice in Gemini is likely to blow that up and expand that truth exponentially. Is my sense of it. And so that, again, coming back to the innocence of it and our desire for the more beautiful world is the way through that, and the sincere curiosity. Gemini's best qualities are non-judgmental curiosity. We're really just trying to collect data, trying to sincerely understand why you think the way you do. Show me the data points that inform this worldview. Help me understand. I'm not agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm really just curious, and to be able to take all that in and hold it. I was just checking my notes to maybe see if there's anything else I want to say about that. Yeah, the other piece of this, Mrigashira is ruled by Soma, which is one name for the moon, but that word Soma refers to the nectar of immortality. It is this mysterious plant substance that gets referred to again and again in the classic Ayurvedic texts. And the understanding is it's basically the Vedic equivalent of ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms, or some access point probably involving DMT, to that is the consciousness expander that puts you in touch with more subtle realms. And so this concept of Soma rules this area of the sky. And so talk about distorted information, right? Where, like, in my experience with psychoactive substances, the images I'm seeing, the data that's coming through is not clear. It's not it's not verifiable. It's not, I can't write a research report about it, and yet it has a truth to it. It's this expanded perceptual realm where your senses are distorted, and yet you're able to get really important, valuable information. And so that's the energy of this eclipse, where it has this psychedelic quality to it, where just because things are spinning and you see shapes in the trees or whatever, doesn't mean that that's false information. It's not what you're used to seeing, and it is a distortion of your everyday senses, and yet there's valuable data there for you. And if you're in the middle of an ayahuasca experience and you're I'll speak from my own experience, watching myself die in 1,000 different ways, I didn't literally die, so we could say that those images weren't true. And yet that's such valuable information that I was able to experience. So that's the energy of this summer solstice eclipse. So one thing to say is I typically would not recommend engaging with psychedelic substances in this realm or at this time. It is, you know, the nodes are devious energies. They're tricksters. And so your well-intentioned psilocybin ceremony or whatever we got to be really careful what we're inviting through the portal. And it's likely to just go a little bit wonky. And so wait until after July 4th to do anything like that. This time in the world is psychedelic enough. You know, it is like a weird trip in a lot of ways. And so just be with that. Go, the more deeply you can go into your own presence with the craziness of the world right now, it is psychoactive enough, isn't it? So we're right at an hour, and so I don't know if how much time we want to take. Do we want to take another 30 minutes to discuss the third eclipse, or where are people at? What do people want to do? How are we feeling? What's coming up?
I would say we should carry on. I think we really want to hear about the third eclipse, and if people need to jump off, of course, no hard feelings. Please go live your lives. Dimitri says third eclipse, and also we'll record this and we'll put this up on the Cultivate Balance website, and we'll share the link around. So if you had to jump off, no worries, you can catch up with it later. But definitely, everyone says keep going. Thank you, David, so much.
Cool. Is that okay? And so just to thanks for the feedback. And so I just want to pause and again invite commentary on the information that's available and how people are sifting through and what are your strategies for discernment, and to what extent have you sought out new sources of information, whether that be, you know, further down in the direction, you know, like I've definitely sought out and, you know, followed a bunch of new people on Instagram and Twitter of, like, you know, Black Lives Matter folks and people of color willing to educate white folks, and created a whole new set of resources there. And I've also tried to go down the rabbit hole of, like, okay, like, what are the people that I'm not inclined to agree with saying? What are the counter narratives to my basic belief systems?
We gotta know.
And how can I understand that as their sincerely held worldview? And again, that innocence, trusting that they also have this basic innocence within them, and they also are just trying to create the more beautiful world that they want to see. And yet it feels so contrary to what I imagine a more beautiful world to be. And yet trusting, find that place within me that can see that they're just, you know, a confused child like myself, and trying to figure it out and do the best they can. So I just want to invite a little bit of commentary about how are we using our discernment, what are some new sources of information, and how has that changed your perception?
Yep. Don't be shy to unmute yourselves, people. If you're
Rebecca.
Rebecca, hi.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi. So one thing that's been so striking to me here in Brooklyn is a lot of these protests are being done in silence. And I feel like, you know, John and I are like the oldest people in the crowd, you know, and it's amazing to see all these, you know, young folks. Sorry to sound like an older person, but I am. Like, they're sitting in silence. They're not on their phones. They're not tweeting and texting and doing all that. They're actually sitting. And I feel like for the first time, there's a willingness to go, okay, let me just like go in and sit and actually listen. Because that feels like it's a big piece that's been missing. You know, instead of, well, we're these really smart white people and we're going to tell you Black folks what you need. They're actually going, oh, I have no flipping idea what to do here. So let me just listen and be silent and be still. And I feel like that's a way that information is getting in that, you know, is really powerful, and that they're probably not even aware of yet. It freaks some of them out, you can see, but they're sticking with it, which I just think is so amazing.
That's so cool.
I'm always encouraging that. It's like, just sit in silence, go in. If you're confused, just be confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Literally, I'm thinking like with reading, there's so many different things we could be reading and so much information we could be taking in. And it's really cool to just be able to sit with information that comes in and not just like let it all of a sudden change your world. Like you don't just change all of a sudden, okay, now I'm on this belief path and now I'm on this belief. I feel like I've been prone to that. Like, oh my gosh, this information came to me. Now I know that this is the truth. And it's just like, try to just sit and be with all the different viewpoints. And then listen inward.
That inner listening. Absolutely. And Rebecca, it's such a beautiful example of, and like with all this Gemini Mercury energy active, it is actually a great time to do the listening and to be in silence, because the likelihood to have verbal diarrhea is strong, right? When Mercury's retrograde and there's an eclipse in Gemini, it's like likely to want to say all the things and talk too much. And again, talked about this on Sunday. I forget her name. Anyway, it was an audiobook I was listening to about conversation skills, and she gave this acronym called WAIT, and it stands for Why Am I Talking? And and for someone who most of you will know has the tendency to be quite verbose, this question, just to like wait, why am I talking? Because so often we're talking for reasons other than to communicate meaning that is important to share, right? I'm talking because I'm nervous. And I've watched myself do this in like appointments with clients, where I will ask a question, and I just did it now, actually, asking a question and not stopping to wait for the response, explaining the question more, talking about my answer to the question, and just continuing to just keep talking. And so this quote, wait, why am I talking? And it slows the whole thing down, because Gemini moves really quickly. Mercury is the planet that is closest to the sun, zips around the sun really, really fast. And that's why it's actually associated with the earth element, because it is the only planet that moves fast enough to keep up with all the different activities in the embodied, created realm. And so one of the interesting facts about Mercury that is sort of the key to mastering mercurial energies is to understand that its year is shorter than its day. Yeah, its day is longer than its year, right? So it takes less time for Mercury to do a lap around the sun than it does for it to spin once on its axis. And so the way I understand this is like, okay, it's zipping around, it's doing laps, it's getting all this information that's coming in. But then internally in the center, it's actually turning very slowly. And so there's this sense of the calm in the eye of the storm. And so it's really the mastery of Mercury is to be hyper aware of all the shifts, all the information coming to you, and then very still in the center, and not really moved by the rapidity of all the data coming in, and to just hold just holding it, not being changed by it, spinning very slowly internally while you're zipping around collecting all this data. And that's really the mastery of Mercury. So yeah, the silence, what a powerful form of communication. And that is such a great access point. So yeah, okay, so let's unless somebody else wants to jump in and elaborate on that or say something more.
Just what you were saying in terms of Mars, the Mars energy, the warrior energy.
Yeah.
Like one thing that's shifting is people are realizing I can do the violent Mars energy and I can like throw things and curse and all that, or I can actually just like be silent and know that my presence here is actually just as powerful.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing lesson too, because you can feel it when you're silent and just standing in one place.
And there's the archetype of the warrior in the garden, right? There's the quality of the warrior that's out battling and chopping heads off and all that. That's one way of it. But the warrior in the garden is peaceful, quiet, calm, contemplative, and in fact, like, all the more powerful for it. In the art of war, there's something about how the true warrior defeats his opponent so that the opponent has no idea that he's been defeated, has no idea that there's actually even been a battle, and feels that they have come out victorious, and yet they've been vanquished, right? And that's the true warrior quality. And so that quality of silence, stillness, composure, and the true warrior is so skillful that they never actually have to go to battle and fight. So that's definitely that ideal quality, and that's based on accurate interpretation of the data available, which is Mercury's function. In the classical order of the planets, we've got the sun, the moon, which are the archetypal mother, father, which then create life. Once life is created, we have Mars, which is that protective warrior energy that says, okay, I'm going to survive. I need to protect this fragile being so it can survive. Once Mars has assured survival, Mercury is next, because once we're able to be stably alive, then we're collecting information. We need new data. We're here to explore and learn and build skills and collect data. And so these two are very, very much connected. Once we can survive, then we can be curious. And I've said this a lot lately, but Mercury is actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, Katrina. You're still muted. There you go.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, to answer that question, I was just gonna speak to the same thing that you're saying in a slightly different way, which is when I'm realizing more and more that the sources of information that I value, that I resonate with, it's the state of being that person that's sharing. So if the person is coming at me with really intense energy and, like, that might sound new age, but like, and stressed out and nervous, I'm much more likely to question what they're sharing with me, because there's this part of me that is recognizing a state of being that's in balance or not in balance. And just also for everyone, it's a reminder to me that when I want to share something with someone, I need to cultivate the state of being that I have, so that what's coming across is coming across in the most the most direct way that the person can receive.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. Alexa, what do you got?
Hi, yeah. I appreciate all these conversations that we're having right now. It's really opening me up. But one of the things I'm noticing in my experience right now is that it's coming down to a lot of very personal conversations with family members who are not woke. Like they don't, they're doing their best, but they're very, like, stuck in old ways. And I'm noticing the same thing that Katrina was saying. Like the way that I approach conversations is very important right now, because whenever someone comes at me with a way of, like, you think this way and therefore you're this, like, it shuts me down completely, and I can't talk or move. And it's a dual way. Like if I'm speaking to my parents or other family members who are very conservative, if I'm talking to them as if I know everything about them, then that it doesn't create the room and the space. So I really love the reminder to pause and to listen and to ask questions, because really that's like the space in which, like, spirit can move through us and actually, like, speak in a beautiful way and say something profound. And it's really using that silence as power, not silence in the way of you're not doing anything, but the silence of, like, no, I'm going to create the space in which there's actually room for change, rather than just this, like, aggressive pressing way. So so that being said, I'm trying my best to be more of a listener than I am to, like, speak right now. But I still know, like, I'm flubbing all over the place and having these conversations, and the fear of abandonment is very big in this, where I'm like, I'm having these conversations with my family and they could just be like, well, we don't, like, we're done, like, we don't need to talk to you anymore. But I know that it's so important, and it's just coming up every day that I'm like, okay, I have to have these very hard conversations, but not in a way where I think that I know. And one of the things I've been doing is like limiting my time on social media, because I recognize that I just get into these thought loops of just having so much information thrown at me that I'm like, I don't actually know what's happening. And so I'm slowing my media down a little bit, so that I can articulate myself better in situations where, you know, my family might have questions for me and I don't know the answers, but it's like, okay, well, at least I can start to come up with something stronger than if I just had so much information thrown at me. So that's where I'm at right now. And I appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate this conversation very much.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, you know, something you mentioned about the fear, and what I was about to say is that the transformation of fear is curiosity. The key way to move through the fear is to get curious. And this is also it's a very disarming strategy as well, to be sincerely curious to understand what someone is saying, where they're coming from. And it's one of the strategies for like, you know, if somebody makes like a racist or sexist joke, to like ask them to explain it. Like, wait, I don't get it. Can you explain why that's funny? And to make them say like, well, it's funny because women are bad drive. Oh crap, I didn't, you know, and so like you get them to actually say the implicit belief, and then when you get them to do that, it is self-evident how inappropriate it is, and that's where like the curiosity, the reflective listening is definitely a powerful tool right now. So if you're in a conversation with friends, family, just to go really slow with everything they say, right? And so, okay, instead of like jumping to rebuttal and like, well, you quoted that piece of data and you're wrong because this other data contradicts it, whatever. It's like, okay, and so to go to dive in, like, okay, so you use this word, use that word Antifa, like what's your understanding of what that means? And not saying, well, Antifa is anti-fascist, and if you're against anti-fascist, that makes you a pro-fascist, and are you pro-fascist? But to get them to actually explain it, and in my experience, most people haven't thought about it very much.
Yeah.
And haven't actually spent a lot of time contemplating it or doing any deep research. And that gets exposed really quickly if you just ask a follow-up question. And then that can go one of two ways. A lot of times that leads to frustration and throwing arms up and walking away from the conversation. And then like there's not much you can do about that. But it also then creates the opening, the space to gently make an offering of like, well, my understanding comes from this angle, and I found this piece of information really interesting, and it sort of shows the cracks in the veneer where you can then get the info in.
For sure, it definitely. Sorry, it just makes me realize how our system is set up to divide too. It's so nuanced. Everything is there's so many shades here that we're just trying to understand, and a lot of us are just getting one-sided information all the time. And it's like, okay, well, if I can ask questions and be curious with these people who have vastly different views than me, then I start to
talking about the astrology of all this.
Like, oh,
Julie, I'm saying with the eclipse.
Sorry, God.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Sorry.
But yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, it's a terrible metaphor, but I found them, it's like if you come charging at someone with sword drawn, they've got their shield up, right? And are able to bat you off. Whereas if you come in with your arms out wide, you give them a hug and then you sort of knife them in the back with the information that you're trying to offer, right? It's again, a little bit of a dangerous metaphor, but it in sort of getting information, because people put up their boundaries really quick, right? As soon as they think, oh, you're a liberal, idealistic, snowflake, millennial, whatever, then they've labeled you, their guard is up, and they know exactly, they've got their talking points to bounce you off. Whereas if you come like, hey, like I would love to have a conversation with you, and how are you today, and what's happening, what's your point of view? And then once you're in close, then you have more opportunity to offer them what you're trying to share. Yeah. Sorry that the violence of that metaphor is maybe not as good as the changing diapers, but it's a thing. Okay, so wanting to touch on another penumbral lunar eclipse, July 4th or 5th, depending where you are in the world. Again, penumbral, inexact, right? Around the sort of edge of the shadow. So let's pull up that chart here. This one? That looks right. Okay. So get my tools out here. So here we are in this Gemini Sagittarius axis again, and here we are on Earth. Oh, look at that circle. Yeah. And so here we are, this one. Okay, so we're in this same Gemini Sagittarius axis, but the eclipse is down here in Sagittarius, right? So we've got the moon and K2 lined up again. So this is another full moon. When a solar eclipse happens on the new moon, a lunar eclipse happens on the full moon. And so this is happening down here in Sagittarius. And Jupiter is there. Pluto is also there. And so Vedic astrology doesn't usually work with outer planets, but Pluto has a very generational influence, very transformative planet. And Pluto's been retrograding. It's been in Capricorn, stirring things up, and now it's back in Sagittarius for this eclipse, and then it'll be back. So Pluto is a planet of creative destruction, right? It's the part of us that needs to destroy in order to create. Okay, we'll see you, Alexa. You can watch the rest of the recording. Thanks for being here. Thanks for contributing. We'll see you next time. So yeah, this is happening in Purva Ashada Nakshatra. Purva means before, prior to, or early on. And Ashada has to do with victory. So this is, Purva Ashada is the early victory. And it has to do with, it comes right after Mula Nakshatra, which that word Mula means root. And so it's in Mula that we have uprooted old beliefs, old ways of being. It's the phase where in the process of creating a garden, we are churning the soil, pulling up old roots, pulling up rocks, laying the foundation, clearing the field so that we can then plant new seeds that we want to grow. And Purvashada is the early victory, the early nourishment, where we're watering those seeds and caring to them and maybe building a fence around them and giving them a little a pole for the beans to climb or whatever, right? And that nourishment, and it has to do with early childhood, where how we end up as adults has so much to do with how we were nourished or not as small children. And it sort of sets us up for the extent to which we succeed at life, whatever that means for you. The way we're set up for that in early childhood determines the extent to which we can accomplish that success. So there's this quality of faith where it's an incredible act of faith to plant a seed, right? To take this potentially very valuable thing and just bury it in the ground, like that's an incredible act of faith. And yet, if we nourish it, it bears fruit or vegetables, right? And having a child is an incredible act of faith that they, will, it's a perilous prospect to bring a new life into the world. And yet, new people are what keep us going, and we need beautiful new humans in the world. So there's that sense of devotion and the devotion of a mother to her child, and the care that's required, and that fine-tuned attention is this area of the sky. And so with this eclipse, it's sort of this quality of, okay, so yesterday we activated this warrior quality. Okay, these are the principles I'm willing to fight and die for. And then 2 weeks from now, we've got this, okay, new information's coming in. How can I hold that? How can I can be sensitive to that and be curious and collect all this new data. And based on that new data, we may have a new world, a new world view, a new perception of those around us, a new perception of ourselves. And so this eclipse on July 4th comes in as, okay, let's nourish that. We've defunded some police. We've gotten the attention of our leaders. We got attention. We got a mass movement together. Let's really carefully nourish that. Let's be really, really careful and build a fence around it and water it and create that nourishment, because it's in those early phases of the revolution that we set ourselves up for long-term success to the extent that that's possible. So it becomes a really crucial time, right? It's in the womb, and the first 6 months after birth are shown to really set the pattern of a child's nervous system for its whole life. And minor events at that time have this butterfly effect, right, where it ripples out and has all sorts of unintended consequences. So that's what this July 4th eclipse is all about, is being really careful and attentive to the quality of what's happening. And so there's that devotional quality, but the sort of the shadow side of it is that, okay, the way we're trained and influenced in early childhood set us up for the rest of our lives, right? So if we're taught good manners, we'll be polite and respectful for the rest of our life. Nice. But if we're taught that you're going to heaven if you accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior, and anybody who doesn't is going to hell and is a bad person and is damned, that belief may stick with you for the rest of your life, and that may inhibit some of the ways that you're going to interact and exist, and may limit some of the opportunities you have to get to know people and to experience the wider world and to learn and grow, if you are stuck with that fundamentalist belief that you were indoctrinated into as a child. And so it is this area of the sky that is also associated with fundamentalism, right? Where the seed has been planted, and you cannot plant a potato seed and expect to get some kale out of it, right? So based on the seed that's planted, you're going to get a particular result. And it's very rare that any of us truly transcend and evolve fully out of our early childhood training and the template that we are created in. And so that's this area of the sky where we're likely to be expressing our innate nature. The seeds that were planted, the way they were nourished, this is the fruit that they bear. And so it is this invitation to examine that, especially with Jupiter there. Jupiter is retrograde and very much connected to this eclipse, and very much connected. Jupiter is the indicator of in so many ways of our quarantine, and there are previous editions of this apocalyptic astrology series that you can go back and watch the recording to understand more about Jupiter's importance right now. But it's a time to be questioning our teachings, questioning our teachers, parents, teacher, minister, guru, and reflect on our built-in beliefs, reflect on the water of our lives, right? Where it's so pervasive that we don't even notice that it's there. These basic belief systems that we just assume, yeah, that's the way it is. And within that framework, that's the filter through which I understand every other piece of information that comes to me. So it's a really important time to be examining those qualities within ourselves, and it can be really hard, which again is the importance of getting curious, having some of these hard conversations, embracing and holding information that you might not otherwise seek out to see how it fits and see how, even if it's contrary to your basic worldview, what value does it have? How might it be true? How might it be outside your box of belief? And how can you understand that box of belief as being inherently limited? And that's the only path to true growth and evolution. There's a great graphic where it has two circles separate from each other, and one circle is the comfort zone, the other circle is where the magic happens, and there is zero overlap in those two circles. And so this July 4th eclipse is a perfect time to get outside your box of belief and at least question. It doesn't mean overhaul, it doesn't mean change your whole life based on it, but at least be questioning, what are my assumptions that I've had since childhood? What is my basic operating program? And has Apple released an update that I need to download and install? Another bad metaphor, but makes sense, right? Where it's there's likely to be some new software out there that you can download and install that will update your operating system, and the colors will be brighter, the programs will run faster, but you may have to learn some new gestures. You may have to learn, oh, this thing that used to be here is now over here. Oh, and this feature doesn't exist, but I have this new feature, right? So that's what this time is really about. And this is the only eclipse. This is visible over most of the Americas. So most of the US, Mexico, South America, and then it goes over the Atlantic Ocean and a little bit into West Africa. But this is the one eclipse that's visible over the United States. And so we've got the 9:30 p.m. July 4th in San Francisco.
Wild. It's on Independence Day. I mean, here
on Independence Day, everybody's going to be looking up in the sky for the fireworks. Literal cosmic fireworks happening.
It's like
so
upgrade.
Wow. Yeah.
Wild.
So yeah, that's that quality. And so we're at 90 minutes now. I feel like it's probably appropriate to start to wrap up, but again, want to invite comments, questions, enthusiasm, fear, whatever's up with people. Let's talk about it for a minute here.
A lot of integration.
Yeah, it's a lot. Drinking from the fire hose here, and what
we are
saying
here.
about the style of communication. My style tends to be fire hose, and so sorry about that. It's why we make recordings.
We're
right?
here
It's
for
why
it.
everything equipment I do is recorded, because it's really important to then go back and I've probably said 12 things that didn't get heard. And so, but this is the fun non-linear nature of time, is that if and when you go back and listen, that's the moment you're meant to hear it. So, yeah.
David, thank you so much. And you don't have to apologize for speaking like a fire hose, because we're hanging on every word. It's really, really, we're so grateful for you and the way that you are distilling this information and creating these metaphors. And my God, it's so helpful and fascinating. And so if anyone is new here, just know this is David McConaghay. He is defining and distilling a whole concept called multidimensional medicine. It's a holistic healing modality that he's integrating. He's an Ayurvedic doctor, he's a Vedic astrologer, and he's also a Doctor of Divinity candidate. And so he's really, really holistic and well-equipped to talk to you about. He does his readings that you can work with him one-on-one, and I would highly recommend that. Go to vedadave.com to learn more about that. David, you look like you might want to say something about that.
No, I'm just blushing. I so appreciate you hosting me and creating the opportunity to share this. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's of benefit. I hope it helps us all evolve together in a good direction towards that more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, to borrow a phrase from Charles Eisenstein. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here. It's really nice to see your faces and hear your voices, and please reach out. You know, I'm here, I'm in Scotland, but it's just a time difference. The internet makes all things possible, and so we'd love to hear from any and all of you. And
yep, and we are recording will be it's on Cultivate Balance. So this is Cultivate Balance. I'm Sierra and one of the co-founders with Molly McConaghay. We're an Ayurveda practice, and I'm going to share a link right now in the chat box. This is funny now, the link, this is where David's talks have lived. We're doing them once a month essentially, and we had started it as Vedic astrology in the time of COVID-19, and then now it feels like so much more than that even, so we may update that link. But this is that link that I just sent to the group is where you'll be able to find the recording as soon as I get it processed later today, and you can share it with people, because as we know, this was really impactful and more people should hear it. So yeah. Thank you, Dave.
And so much mutual love
so
for Cultivate Balance. So many wonderful resources, online courses, like it's doing such a good job of making these ancient sciences accessible, available, practical. I send my clients in their direction all the time, just for it's like such good information, so practical. So yeah, so much love.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for showing up, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and be in touch. Sending love.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.